The blustery winds and drenching rains have blown all of us here in the Midwest into the growing season, a season of renewal when the days stretch longer and all of nature bursts into blossom and bud and green leaf. A season of tender shoots peeking up from the soil. And all of this emerging growth depends upon symbiotic, mutually helpful relationships within communal systems. For example, it depends upon pollinators, bees, beetles, birds, butterflies, and even small mammals who visit flowers to drink nectar or feed off of pollen and transport pollen grains as they move from spot to spot. Ecologist Suzanne Simard discovered that trees also live in communities in which they communicate their need to each other and send each other nutrients by means of a network of latticed fungi buried deep in the soil. Using these networks, trees search for kin, transfer nutrients to neighboring trees to prevent them from dying, and send signals about environmental change to help the whole community adapt. In a recent interview, Simard observes that, quote, a forest is a cooperative system built upon durable symbiotic networks. The networks connect one tree root system to another tree root system so that nutrients, carbon, and water, essential elements for trees to thrive, can be exchanged between trees. These networks will persist because they are mutually supportive, she notes. And I don't think there's ever going to be a shortage of an ability to form such networks. But the new networks might be different because forests adapt. One example of how these networks function may be found in British Columbia, where paper birch and Douglas firs grow in self-sustaining forest communities. The more the Douglas firs become shaded in the summertime, the more excess carbon the birches send to their fir neighbors to make up for the absence of sunlight. When the firs produce excess carbon because of a longer photosynthesis cycle, they send the excess to their birch neighbors, which have relatively short photosynthesis cycles. In this way, the needs of all the members of the community are addressed so that all may have the opportunity to survive and thrive. Simard and her team were astounded to discover that all of the tree species in a communal forest area were connected to and participated in these networks. Using DNA analysis techniques, they mapped the network of linkages and exchanges among trees within the community. They found that the biggest, oldest trees in the networks were, as we might expect, the most highly linked, whereas the smaller trees were connected by fewer links, but were actively building more linkages as they developed. Yet, despite their size differences, the larger trees regularly sent needed nutrients to the smaller ones, and all of the trees, no matter their type, shared needed elements with others. When a tree sustained an injury, the team found that a couple of things happened. One is that the injured tree released its carbon into the network so that the nutrients could be used within the larger system should the tree die. The second is that the number and volume of enzymes that promote healing increased dramatically in all of the trees to be sent through the network to the injured tree. Simard concluded the interview with this wisdom. A forest is a cooperative system that brings resilience to its members It brings the ability to recover and thrive within a wider range of possibilities and contexts. Trees function as the foundation for this cooperative system, providing habitat for other creatures and regenerative networks for other trees. If the forest were all about competition, about each tree's fight against others for nutrients to survive, it would be a much simpler system, but with much less diversity, dynamic growth, and resilience. So I would invite us to think about how our presbytery can live and thrive together like a cooperative community of trees. What life-giving elements do we need to share with each other in community so that all of us have the best opportunities to thrive? And so I wonder, what if we thought about the Presbytery of Southeastern Illinois as a church parish, a single church community with 76 locations? What if every church took advantage of the opportunity to send commissioners to called and stated meetings, to discern together the needs of others within and beyond this parish church community, not just in each of the 76 local locations, but needs that we could better serve together to address? What if folks around the Presbytery parish community made it a priority to gather with one another virtually, perhaps by invitation from nearby churches with greater technological capacities, or in person for the big conversations? In March, Mark Elsden led an interesting interactive conversation about using our physical and financial assets creatively to further mission and ministry. On June 15, Libby Davis Manning from the Wabash Pastoral Leadership Program will engage all of us in a fascinating conversation about how teaching elders, ruling elders, and congregants can use sustainable practices for thriving church leaders. And in October, Corey Schlosser Hall brings his boundless energy to PSEI to converse with us about empowering missional leadership. What if we invited Nate Branningham and Macy Ruppel to share a Presbytery on the Road gathering in a conversation in our Presbytery region, maybe even our own congregation? Or what if we marked our calendars to attend an on-the-road gathering close by to learn more about revitalizing ministry communities and available presbytery resources? What if each of us engaged in prayer and discernment about how we might share the skills which God has gifted us in service on a presbytery team, in preparation for ministry or leadership to serve our neighbors, as a CRE, pulpit supply preacher, a moderator for sessions or congregational meetings, or an officiant to serve the Lord's Supper? What if we subscribed to News to Use, the Presbytery newsletter containing grant opportunities, events in the Presbytery, and important useful information for congregations, such as the significant upcoming changes to the Board of Pensions Benefit Program in 2025? Or what if we made it a priority to attend upcoming Presbytery workshops, such as those to explain benefits changes, or an online discussion as a part of the Presbytery-wide book study on Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast, coming in August and September, to which we are welcoming our neighbors from Wabash Valley Presbytery? What if, right now, we used the sample neighborhood model that we will consider modifying and adopting at a future Presbytery meeting this year to find out more about our neighbors, even if we think we know them already, and to pray for these neighbors in our local areas, offering gratitude to God for their faithful ministries and asking God to help us see clearly what we might offer them in service, like the trees, to meet some of their needs. In all of these ways and more, we could take our cue from the trees about how to thrive, about how to be resilient by sharing life-giving resources with one another in community. The writer Hermann Hesse has written this wonderful reflection in his book, Trees, Reflections and Poems. For me, trees have always been the most penetrating preachers. I revere them when they live in tribes and families, in forests and groves. In their highest boughs, the world rustles. Their roots rest in infinity. But they do not lose themselves there. They struggle with all the force of their lives for one thing only: to fulfill themselves according to their own laws, to build up their own form, to represent themselves. Nothing is holier. Nothing is more exemplary than a beautiful, strong tree. Trees are sanctuaries. Whoever knows how to speak to them, whoever knows how to listen to them, can learn the truth. They do not preach learning and precepts. They preach the ancient law of life. A tree says, "A kernel is hidden in me, a spark, a thought. I am life from eternal life." A tree says, "My strength is trust. I live out the secret of my seed to the very end, and I care for nothing else. I trust that God is in me. I trust that my labor is holy. Out of this trust, I live." Friends, may we learn to live together in thriving communities like the trees.